have to use the medications. Psychotropic / neuroleptic is another name, but you have to use those medications sometimes. And it's very important to understand that those medications are doing something to the brain that's making that person's life much better. So you shouldn't feel like, oh my God, I don't want to use medications. That's not what this is about, although the goal of this study was to decrease agitated behaviors and decrease psychotropic medications. People have to use them sometimes, a lot of the time. So again, these are just things, I have them on my handout, ideas of things that could be going on. And sundowning, has everybody here heard of the word sundowning? So sundowning is something that happens usually starting in the later afternoon at around 4 or 5 o'clock, and it actually sometimes probably happens a little later in the summer because we do see it happening when the sun starts to go down. That's why they named it sundowning. And oftentimes that's the time behavior's the worst. So that's why people started calling it sundowning. And again, we're not sure why. I think sometimes people are more tired at the end of the day, just like we are. If you can imagine, if you have some sort of organic brain syndrome going on, that it's going to be even harder at the end of the day for you. So write down any activity, noise, visitors, or anything that causes stimulation in the environment on that log. Write everything down that could be going on. Take some quiet time and think about it at the end of the day, and that's probably going to be your best bet to kind of try and figure out what those antecedents are. So what are the protocols for averting these? Step 2, modify the environment or the situation. Okay? And we just talked a lot about the first part of that, which is being the detective, looking at behaviors, logging behaviors. So I'm not going to go back into that too much. I think we just did a lot of that. So step 3 is to use an activity to redirect into something that's pleasurable. We call them pleasurable events. I really think this is the best tool. We call it our hat of magical tricks. It's pulling that white rabbit out of the hat and being able to become magical. And that's why I like to use the hat and having your magical tricks in the hat and pulling them out, because it really is quite magical what can happen. So one of the things that we have done is in our assessment, and I'm not good with this. Here we go. Okay. In our assessment, what we do is we will start in the assessment with what did this person like to do when they were well? Let's modify that to what they can do now. And then let's write it on a list and use it. We put them right on the refrigerator and the caregiver binder and call it Mr. Jones's list of pleasurable activities. A pleasurable activity can be anything. So Mr. Jones loved to go to concerts. He can't go to a concert hall anymore. It's too overstimulating for him. So we're going to modify that into something he can do now, which is listen to his favorite classical music, at home. Okay? So that's how simple this is. We had some very interesting situations when I was working in New York with late-stage patients where there was a woman, she was 92, she had been an Army doctor. So it says a lot about her. And they had a doctor kit, and we used to kind of interact with her with this doctor kit. And this was also part of this research project. So, we had these wonderful test subjects, but, that's not what we thought of them. They were wonderful to interact with. And it was amazing to see the response we can get out of them. And again, of course, as Dr. Freitag said, music is always something, music from that person's era is always something that will touch everybody. We've seen that across the board. There was another woman who was a seamstress, and we took a bunch of different kinds of material, and we put a little hole, and we put them on a ring, and she loved to feel that material. She loved to just touch it. And these are later stage patients. When they're in the later stages, the pleasurable events are going to be more sensory. Taste. I have a late-stage patient right now. We are cracking up at her. She loves cheeseburgers. And she's like 90 and on hospice. And I think it was the other day they gave her a cheeseburger, and the caregiver said, "How did you like the cheeseburger?" And she barely talks, and she goes, "Mustard next time." Yeah, and it was so cool. And so since then, we've been giving her, we put an order to the caregivers, cheeseburgers every day. We're not worried about her cholesterol. So, huh? Yep. And we went out and ran out and got some mustard for her. So, I mean, and she's really interesting too. Like we have a list of pleasurable events for her. One of the things she loves is her husband. One of the activities is to bring her husband, he has Alzheimer's also, as much as we can. He's much more functional. Because that really is, her pleasure is food and her husband. It's very, very, very touching to watch the two of them together. So, I mean, it's beyond touching. He was actually separated from her for a month because he was hospitalized and then went to rehab. And all they did was talk about one another. The only thing she really talked about was him. And this is a very touching story. Late stage, we don't really know 100% what they're perceiving. But something is definitely there. And don't ever forget that, because I've seen this over and over again. But this particular woman, I was talking with her, and I said, "I'm going to see," of course I'm screaming because she can barely hear, "I'm going to see Ira. What would you like me to say to him?" And I was videotaping it. And she said, "Stop fooling around and get home." Yeah. And then she's really funny. And then I said, "And what else?" And she said something else really funny. And then I said, "Anything else?" She said, it was very sad. She said, "Tell him it's too heavy for me to hold on my own." Yeah. And her brow was all furrowed. I mean, so and she is definitely late stage, and she barely is conscious, and she's sleeping most of the time. So it just goes to show that you never want to, there's always something pleasurable that you can do. You should never just assume that a late stage Alzheimer's patient is not capable of pleasure. And we do this at all levels. So a lot of our clients are very capable of doing all kinds of things. So we're not looking at these later stage activities. We're looking at things that they can go to a concert. So again, you're getting your list together. Now, why I have a recap sheet, I have this mainly because we have homes with multiple caregivers, and then they can share what was successful, what wasn't successful. They put all the activities down. If one of them causes an agitative episode, it's put in here, and we know not to use it. So that's kind of where this came from. I'm going to go back like this. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to go back like this. So I think we've kind of gone through a case example, and I want to stop in just 3 minutes and give everyone a chance to ask questions. So again, we're talking about Mr. Jones. He has moderate stage Alzheimer's with agitation. He's discharged home. He has care. We go over the behavior sheet. Why are these behaviors occurring? We're playing detective. We're writing them down so we're able to study them, and we're not. Your caregivers are very overwhelmed, so they're not going to remember these things each time. So you can refer back and get used to changing that environment, effectively changing things in the